You've walked past this plant 1,000 times. It's growing in the crack of a sidewalk somewhere right now. It's in your backyard, flattened into that dirt path where everyone cuts across the grass. Low, green, unremarkable. The kind of plant you'd call just a weed, if you noticed it at all. Somebody probably pulled it out of their lawn this week and threw it away without thinking twice. But here's the strange part. For most of human history, people didn't ignore this plant. They planted it near their homes on purpose. They carried it across oceans. And an entire continent of people once named it after the strangers who kept showing up wherever it grew. By the end of this video, you're going to look at your own lawn a little differently. So, what is this thing? It's called plantain, not the banana-like fruit you fry in the kitchen. That's a completely different plant, different family. Nothing in common except the name. This plantain is Plantago, and there are two versions you'll run into constantly. Plantago major, broad, rounded leaves growing low in a flat rosette, and Plantago lanceolata, narrow, ribbed leaves that stand more upright, almost like blades of grass. Different shapes, same personality, because both of them grow in exactly the places you'd expect a plant to struggle. Lawns, sidewalks, roadsides, sports fields. Anywhere the soil gets packed down hard by feet, tires, or hooves, plantain shows up. And that's actually the interesting part. Most plants hate being walked on. Their stems snap. Their roots can't breathe in compacted soil. Eventually they just give up. Plantain does the opposite. Its leaves grow flat against the ground, low enough that footsteps mostly slide over them instead of crushing them. Its roots are shallow, but wide, built for soil that's been stepped on 1,000 times. And each plant can release up to 20,000 seeds, tiny ones, the kind that stick to mud on a shoe, or a paw, or a tire, and travel with you without you ever noticing. That's not an accident of evolution. That's a plant that adapted specifically to follow humans, which brings us to the name, because history actually caught up with that idea. In North America, indigenous peoples started noticing this plant showing up shortly after European settlers arrived. Wherever the settlers built roads, farms, towns, this plant followed close behind, thriving in the disturbed ground they left in their wake. So they gave it a name: white man's footprint. A weed that literally traced the path of colonization, leaf by leaf, seed by seed. But its story goes back even further than that. Long before it crossed any ocean, plantain already had a reputation in Europe and Asia as a household remedy. The plant you could just reach down and grab, right outside your door. Folk traditions across completely unconnected cultures used crushed or chewed leaves for minor cuts, insect stings, skin irritation. Some cultures brewed the leaves into a soothing tea for coughs and sore throats. Others used the seeds, which produce a slippery gel-like substance the plant makes to protect itself. Now, those are traditional uses, passed down through generations, not medical claims. But they're exactly the reason scientists eventually got curious enough to put this plant under a microscope. So what did they find? Plantain leaves contain a compound called aucubin, along with related compounds like catalpol and plantamagicide. Skip the chemistry lecture for a second. Here's what actually matters. These are the plant's own defense molecules, and in lab studies, they show anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial activity. The leaves also contain mucilage, the same slippery, soothing substance you'd find in aloe vera, which might explain why people have used it on irritated skin for centuries. And they contain allantoin, a compound also found in comfrey, associated with soothing effects on skin. None of that makes plantain a miracle cure, but it does explain something. Why a useless weed kept showing up independently in the folk medicine of cultures that had never even met each other. So, what does modern science actually say? Let's be honest about this, because a lot of plant videos aren't. Here's what's well established. Laboratory studies, including work on skin cells and research in animal models, show that plantain extracts can support the wound healing process. and they show measurable antimicrobial activity against certain bacteria. That lines up with centuries of traditional use for cuts and skin irritation. Here's what's promising, but not settled. Some research is exploring plantain's potential anti-inflammatory, even anti-cancer properties at the cellular level. Interesting. Genuinely interesting. But far from proven in humans. Not close to being called a treatment. And here's what's mostly traditional. Drinking plantain tea for digestion or respiratory issues, that's a long-standing folk remedy. But it doesn't have the same strong, direct clinical evidence behind it that the wound care research does. And here's the part people get wrong. The internet loves turning ordinary plants into miracle cures. One blog post, a few shares, and suddenly a backyard weed is supposedly curing everything from inflammation to cancer. That's not what this is. The honest version of this story isn't miracle weed cures everything. It's this: a plant that people trusted instinctively for 2,000 years turns out to have real chemistry behind at least some of that trust. And science is still catching up to the rest. Some of these traditional practices haven't disappeared, by the way. People still use them today, especially in herbalism and foraging circles. Young plantain leaves, picked before the plant flowers, are sometimes eaten raw in salads or cooked like a leafy green, similar to spinach. The older leaves get tougher, more fibrous, so those usually get cooked rather than eaten fresh. Some people still steep the leaves into a tea. Externally, crushed leaves are sometimes applied to minor skin irritation, the same folk practice that's been passed down for centuries. If you're thinking about trying any of this yourself, though, a quick word first. Never eat or apply any wild plant unless you're completely certain of the identification. Plantain is easy to recognize once you know it, but easy isn't certain, and mistakes with wild plants can be dangerous. Avoid picking anything growing right next to roads or industrial areas or lawns that might have been treated with pesticides. Plants like this absorb whatever's in the soil around them, and traditional use is not a substitute for medical treatment. If you're pregnant, managing a health condition, or taking medication, talk to a doctor before using any herbal remedy, this one included. Individual allergic reactions are possible too, even with a plant this common. That's not meant to scare you off. It's just common sense before you touch anything that grows wild. So, next time you're walking across a lawn or cutting through a gap in the sidewalk, look down. That flat, unremarkable plant under your feet has survived being trampled by humans for thousands of years. And somewhere along the way, it became one of the quietly useful plants on the planet, hiding in plain sight in nearly every backyard in the world. It's not a miracle plant. It's something better than that. Proof that the things we walk past every single day are usually a lot more interesting than we assume. There's another useless weed outside your door right now. Next time, we're going to find out what it's hiding.